This conference will now be recorded.
Raise in Texas, something, but somehow you can also get used to it after time too. All right, we're gonna go outside and play a little bit, Rocco. Let me get changed. Do it. You're gonna get. Hey. No.
Hello, Ashley.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hey, Ashley.
Good afternoon. Here we go.
Hello,
Good evening, Hugh. I've got you.
number 2.
There you go. Beautiful. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, Hugh, welcome.
Yeah, good evening.
Hello.
Casey, I have 6 o'clock and I see that all the board is here, so we'll get started.
Ready to go?
All right, so good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending the West Goshen Township Board of Supervisors workshop meeting of May 4th, 2021. To start the meeting, will you please stand if you can and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be aware this video audio meeting is being recorded tonight, and so we can have as smooth a meeting as possible, please note the following. While you are listening, please keep yourself on mute to eliminate distracting background noise. Each agenda item requiring a vote will proceed with a motion, a second by a board member, followed first by board member comments and questions, and then second by public comment and questions before a roll call vote is taken. When wishing to speak, please address myself as the meeting chair, requesting to comment and announce your name. And note there is an opportunity to raise any issues not specifically on the agenda during the public comment period. I have one announcement. The board met in executive session on May the 3rd to discuss personnel and legal matters. And before we begin with our main agenda items tonight, I want to invite Derek Davis, our Assistant Township Manager, to share an announcement he would like to make.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, all the staff. I won't take up too much of your time tonight. I actually I have to shove off after this. I have a prior obligation. But as many know internally, I opted to leave West Goshen in a couple of weeks, and I have a new employment opportunity upon me. It was a tough decision, but after some thought, it was the best decision for me at the time. And I just wanted to come on here very briefly before you start your meeting, publicly thank the board first and foremost. I've worked with a lot of board members over the years. You all have your unique style, your unique perspectives you bring. And I think it's frustrating for board members at times and staff at times, hearing everybody's opinions over and over and over again, but that's democracy. And, that's the best process in the world. And at the end of the day, it's what makes us as a community great. So I appreciate all the board members, current and former, that I've worked with and worked for. I also just want to thank the staff really quickly, West Goshen staff. To me, the institutional knowledge of West Goshen staff and the intelligence that they bring to the table has always made my job easier, in my opinion. And Casey probably feels the same way. So definitely going to miss the staff here. And last but not least, I would like to thank Casey. He entrusted me from the get-go with a lot of responsibility, and it's built over time to where it's really helped me professionally, because I was involved in everything from the get-go at West Goshen, and there's nothing he didn't entrust to me to be able to tackle. So it's been a great 7 years. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I've thoroughly enjoyed working with all of you, and best of luck in the future. I'll keep my eye on West Goshen, and this is, as they say, not goodbye, but I'll see you later. So again, I thank everybody, and I wish you all luck going forward.
Well, congratulations, Derek. Are we allowed to say where you're going, or is that still?
We could at this point. I've been offered the township manager job at East Goshen Township, right next door. So not too far, obviously. I know we have some joint things that we are always working on. So we will, we'll be in touch, obviously, on various things. So definitely catch you all down the road.
Well, we're sorry to see you moving on, but obviously we're glad for you that you've gained a new opportunity and step up the career ladder. So congrats. And East Goshen Township's lucky to be getting you and lead their team. So of course, we look forward to working with you on the different Goshen Township projects that we might have in the future. So on behalf of the board, thank you for your work and contributions to West Goshen Township over the last 7 years. We very much appreciate you having been a key part of our success, and our best wishes for many achievements in your new role.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah, likewise, Dave. Sorry to see you go, buddy.
Thanks, John. Have a good one.
Yep.
All right. Well, we do have a little bit of a shuffle on our agenda tonight to accommodate Kristen's availability. So she's here for a little while, and then she has to drop out for 30 to 45 minutes. So we're going to just move the agenda items around to try to maximize her availability on the topics. And we're going to start with a discussion of the Woodlands at Greystone improvements schedule and the boathouse issue. So Kristen, if you just want to tee that up for us, please.
Sure. Lou Colagrego was on the meeting, and this started with him sending correspondence to the township indicating that there were some modifications of timing. The conditional use decision, as well as the preliminary and final land development decisions granting preliminary and final approval, had various benchmarks and timeframes for when certain improvements had to be done. I think when the conditional use order was put together, which was quite an intricate, compilation of a bunch of different things that had to be done on, a lot of public improvements as well as dedicated improvements. The thought process is that, however many years ago, 2009, we had great intentions of what we thought would happen. But obviously, as you get into construction projects, timing and schedule and weather and things change. So the conditional use order was actually written that the applicant could come back to the board if they needed modifications of the schedule for various benchmarks of whether it's a traffic improvement, a trail improvement, a stormwater management facility. So what Mr. Colagrego has done is twofold in his letter of April 13th. He's identified where certain matters stand with respect to compliance with conditions. And then he's specifically asking for the board to approve modification of timing of various improvements. Mr. Craig has reviewed this. We actually had a draft of this letter. We reviewed with Casey and Rick and Bill, myself. Ray Grahowski spent some time with Rick Craig actually walking the site and going to some of the improvements that need to be improved and or worked upon. So this letter is not coming to you without having a lot of consultation and back and forth between both the developer as well as your staff. So this is here for you to just be aware of what's going on and then also to specifically approve the modifications. Obviously, this letter was written in April 13th. Some of the deadlines have come and gone. I asked Mr. Colagrego if the clients have met these deadlines to the extent the timelines have passed, and he said yes. So I think they're, working in good faith to adhere to the orders that have been approved. And that's the one purpose of this letter. The second, I would like the board to ask questions and take, action on that. And the second part of it is just the boathouse discussion and a change in the land where the boathouse is located. Originally, it was going to be dedicated to the township. That's no longer the case. So there really has to be a dialogue about, and it doesn't have to be decided tonight by any means, but does the board have an idea or a thought of what they would want to see happen to the boathouse, because we need to give direction to the applicant on how to renovate it if there is a proposed use.
Okay, thanks, Kristen. Let's kick it off by seeing if Mr. Colagrego would like to add a few words, and then we'll hear from Rick too. I'd like him to kind of comment on the kind of timelines and how we're doing against them. So let's have a little bit more information from Mr. Colagrego first, please.
Sure. Thank you, Sean. Ray Grahowski, the project manager, is also the one, and he's been the one that's really been working in the field with Rick. But Ray and I spent a lot of time going through this with the township and the staff. The first part of the letter is simply clarification of, things that probably weren't thought through completely by either the township or the applicant way back 12, 13 years ago. Fencing of the dams, various things that have come up that we all recognize should be done. Doesn't really involve any modification of any decision, but it's just plan items that we mutually agree make for a better plan going forward. So if you have the letter in front of you, really the first 9 items on that letter are just things that I think we mutually agree are things that should be incorporated into the plan moving forward. Most of these changes have been incorporated on what we're calling the phase 3 plans, which is the next set of plans where you're going to be asked to approve. They're now pending before the township for review, and we'll await comment in due course. The second part of the letter is really the one that requires the modification of the timing schedule. When you go back through this, not to pat anybody on the shoulder, but I think that everybody, if you look back 12, 13 years, how close we came to predicting what actually would happen, it's pretty remarkable. Some of the timing here is the NID threw everything into a cocked hat. Some things got done faster than anticipated. Some things are dragging. We lost about 90 to 120 days last year because of COVID. We were deemed non-essential service. Remember that term? And everybody had to shut down. Nobody could do anything. So that messed us up last year. But we're back on schedule. And I think Rick is okay with what we've got set forth in this letter. So I don't want to take too much of your time unless there's specific questions. We can get into that. But as I represented to Kristen, to the extent that a date is listed in here that has come and gone, we have met those benchmarks. Plans have either been submitted for review, and in some instances, the repairs are already underway.
All right, thanks. Thank you, Lou. I'd like to hear from Rick at this point, and then we'll open it up to the board for any questions they have about the specific items. Rick, what's your comment on the status of the work?
I pretty much agree with what has been stated so far. The work, all of the items of work listed on the letter are underway. We've had a number of submissions. Some of those submissions have needed to be returned for some changes and some corrections. So there is, of course, that review process and approval process back and forth that's going on. I think in the overall scheme of things, it's unlikely that all of these items that are slated for completion by May 30th are going to be completed by May 30th. But I think the developer is working in good faith and as judiciously as possible. We're running into some difficulties with material acquisitions. Stuff is back ordered. That's no different from what the township's running into with our other projects. And we've had some weather setbacks as well. But all in all, I think everything's pretty well on track, and I'm satisfied with the progress we've made so far.
Okay, thanks, Rick. So board members, do you have any specific questions related to the improvements that are number 1 through 9 in the letter from Lou, or the modification of timing items 1 through 5 on that piece of it? Do you have any specific questions?
Now, if I can ask item number 5 on the modifications to timing, which has to do with the trails and the open space area that will be dedicated to the township. That's supposedly was tied in with the issuance of the 50th use and occupancy permit, which I believe we're beyond that. Where are we at as far as the timeline for the refurbishment of the trails and the 162-acre parcel that the township's going to get?
I can let Ray answer that more specifically. Ray?
Yeah, I can answer that. The trails are probably later this year. That comment number 5 that you're referring to was certain trails that were between 2 of the lakes, and they were primarily used for movement of materials when we were constructing the lakes. But I think the trails and all the open space we're trying for this year, certainly no later than spring of next year, but by the end of this year is the goal to get all the trails in the open space completed.
Other questions from the board? Kristen, are we're looking to approve?
Robin was trying to say something, Sean. I think she was on mute.
Okay, Robin, sorry, I missed you. Go ahead.
That's okay. After our conversations about some of these issues, or being aware of some of them, I'm curious about the existing boathouse being dedicated to West Goshen Township. I thought there was maybe a work in process for the HOA to take ownership, unless this is a different boathouse.
So Robin, can we park the boathouse just for 1 minute? Because I think I was just about to ask Kristen if we can focus on the specific request here to approve for the board approval of the updated improvement installations that have been agreed and the revisions to the timing. If we can just get that sorted first, then we'll specifically address this boathouse question. So Kristen, are you looking for
Okay.
a motion? Are we looking for the board to approve these tonight? Is that what we're asking?
Yes.
Okay. So would a board member like to make a motion around approval of the modifications to the installations that are described in this letter and the timing?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Yeah.
Thanks, Ashley. Are there any board questions or final board questions or comments, having got the motion in a second? Not hearing any. Are there any public comments or questions about these issues?
Sean, this is Doug White. Public comment, please.
Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, Sean. A question to Lou and Ray. The township parkland, the land that the township's going to get. I know that a lot of that, or some of the land, had the trees removed, I guess, to put retention basins and other things. Are those trees going to be replaced, and are they going to be? Is it going to be a one-to-one replacement, or?
You're up, Ray.
I'm sorry, I cut out there. Was the question, are the trees going to be replaced?
Yeah, where the basins are.
Well, where the basins are, and some of the other areas where they weren't really areas of limited disturbance, but for some reason, I guess maybe there were right-of-way issues, trees were removed. It looks like that those areas are to be greenway lands. So I was just wondering about that.
Yeah, I think all the trees that are being removed are inside the limit of disturbance per the plans. And the way the township ordinance is written, that, for example, there's no real street tree requirement in this zoning district, and the replacement trees, to answer your question, yes, the trees will be replaced, but they're planted throughout the property. And there's a plan that detailed that. During the approvals, we had to locate every tree 6 inches and greater in diameter on the property, count all those trees, and that calculated the trees that were to be replanted throughout the property. So the landscape plans show the tree replacements throughout the entire community. The trees for detention basins, when the basin was built, most of the detention basins are actually built on lots. So when the temporary sediment basins get filled in, a lot or a home will be built there.
Okay, so most of the greenway lands were limit of disturbance areas?
Yeah, we're not allowed to take anything down outside of the limit of disturbance, Doug.
Okay, thank you, Ray.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are there any other public questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, we're ready to take a roll call vote. Ashley?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
You?
Aye.
Robin?
Aye.
I vote yes. So thank you for that. We appreciate the note and the clarification, Mr. Colagreco. It was very clear, so thank you.
Thank you.
Let's turn to the second item under this topic, which is the boathouse. And Kristen, you kicked us off by describing the situation where originally it had been contemplated that this boathouse would be on township property at the end of this process, but that was changed during the final land development plan approval. And the boathouse, it will be on property that will be dedicated to the HOA.
Right, so you have a conditional use order that specifically says that the developer has to renovate and repair the boathouse and dedicate it to the township, but then the final plan approval because there were some changes to the improvements that had to be made to the dams. As a result of that concern about ownership of the dams, the township final plan approval reversed it and said that the land area where that particular dam and lake are, and also the land where the boathouse is, would be conveyed to the homeowners association. So the developer in the early stages had included repairing and renovating the boathouse to be consistent with conditional use approval. When they had to go through a federal permitting process, they entered a memorandum of agreement or memorandum of understanding with the Army Corps that again carries over the obligation to renovate and repair and restore the boathouse. But the question is, for what? For what purpose? What's the manner in which it needs to be restored and repaired? You can't really make that decision and determination until you determine who's going to use it, if anybody. I don't know if you're familiar with where it's located, but it's in a difficult area to access. And I think that makes the decision of how you're going to use it, if at all, and who's going to use it, if anyone, it makes it difficult. So anyway, that's the conversation. I did just one point of clarification, because the township is not a party to the memorandum of understanding with the Army Corps. There may be other provisions of that agreement that the developer, not the developer, the Jerakian, I guess, is the party to that. They may have to go back and seek modification of that decision on other matters. But just because it's in that agreement doesn't mean that agreement can't be modified. If the board were to say, you know what, and I'm not suggesting this is your policy, but if you were to make a decision to say it's not feasible for that to be renovated and repaired for any sort of public use, you know, you could do with it as you please, or you want the HOA to maintain it, the developer could go back to the Army Corps and seek a modification of that agreement. So right now it's really just bringing to you the conversation, making you aware of the contradictory, I don't want to say contradictory, because the final plan decision specifically said that if there was a term that was inconsistent with conditional use, the final plan approval controls. But that deals with ownership of the land. It doesn't deal with renovation and repair of the boathouse.
So Kristen, I have a question for you just on that point. So if the final land development approval was for this land to be dedicated to the HOA that the boathouse is on, in other words, the township did not envisage taking that property into public use, what right do we have? Does that not supersede the original 2009 conditional use? Township decides how to describe what renovations are required?
I still think, I mean, they're obligated under their MOA to renovate it and restore it and not to tear it down. So I think the developer is willing, if the township sees that it has a purpose for it, and wants to open it up for any reason, they would grant easements and public access rights to it. So they're willing to do whatever the board wants them to do, I think, quite honestly.
Okay.
They don't want to spend good money after bad. If there's really not going to be an intended purpose for it, it seems silly to make them renovate it. But again, that's completely a policy conversation.
Okay, so open to the board. What questions or thoughts do you want to share tonight?
Well, I want to ask if I can answer a clarification question, Sean.
Go ahead.
Kristen, so regardless of who eventually takes ownership of the boathouse and the lake, I suppose, that it sits on, whether it be the HOA or the township, the memorandum of understanding that Jerakian signed back in 2014 with the Army Corps of Engineers would require the developer or the owner at the time to preserve and maintain that particular property. So in other words, if the township decides to change where things stand down, take over ownership, or the HOA retain ownership as it's presently laid out in the final land development, that boathouse will remain. Is that correct?
Well, they could, that's why I said the point that they can go back and revise the MOA.
Yeah, I can add some clarification. I mean, from the developer's perspective, I mean, this is the first, and I appreciate the conversation. We were going to take down the boathouse when Jerakian proposed this originally 12, 13 years ago. In and of itself, not an historic structure. It may look nice. It's been the source of vandalism. As you all know, recently we've had to go in and board it up, and it will be the source of vandalism. That's our fear going forward. So we were asked at the time to preserve the boathouse And when you read through the conditional use decision, the land development decisions, the earlier decisions, it was all predicated on the township taking ownership of it. The HOA wanted no parts of it. We have nothing to do with it. For the same reason, the township probably may come to the conclusion. I don't know what you do with the boathouse. But in any event, that was our original proposal. But we, as we sit here, we're willing to do what the order says. We're willing to repair it. It's got a new roof on it. We're willing to offer it for dedication. But I wouldn't suppose that if it's not accepted for dedication, I wouldn't suppose that it's going to remain. I don't know that the HOA is going to want to take on that obligation. It serves no useful purpose.
Well, so the answer to my question is yes, the boathouse will remain until whomever takes over ownership of it will then decide what they will do with it. But at this juncture, the developer, meaning you, Lou, I guess, or your client, will refurbish it according to what the township would require. And then, well, in this case, the HOA would take over ownership. That is currently where we stand. Is that correct?
No, just a nuance there, John. We would refurbish it, as the order says, to whatever the township specification was, assuming township dedication. We wouldn't refurbish it and then have it turned over to the HOA. I say this as though I know it. This is the first, we're having this conversation. We wanted to find out what the township's position was first, whether you still want it, and then I guess we can spring into what alternatives exist. That's just I was just giving you some context of how we got to where we are. As we came into the meeting tonight, we're prepared to dedicate it to West Goshen Township. The question was raised, maybe the township doesn't want dedication of it. So that's when we figure that out, I guess then we can figure out what will happen to it.
Well, the other point is you have a separate contractual obligation to repair and renovate it. So, it's the two are tied together. The beneficiary of what you do to that are different parties, whether it's the township or whether it's the Army Corps. So if the board were to decide that they don't want dedication, they're not concerned about renovation and repair, you're gonna have to go back to the Army Corps and get that specific condition revised.
Yeah, we would tell them that West Goshen no longer wants dedication of the boathouse because it was affirmatively represented to them that you did want dedication 13 years ago.
So Kristen, a question for you on this. So when the final land development plan was approved, 2000, what was that, 13, 14, 15?
13, I think.
13. What was the board's, was this discussed at all with the board at that time as to the boathouse, or was it just an oversight that it resided on this property that they said they didn't know was going to be part of the HOA long term?
We were so focused on the dams. The dam was the focal point of the conversation and the modifications because of the concern about the design of the dam repairs. So to be quite honest, I don't think we thought it through as far as, there wasn't a thought to say, oh, well, we don't want the boathouse anymore. We didn't realize that by having the land where the lake and the dam are going to the HOA, that we sort of separated where the boathouse was going, the ownership of the boathouse from the land and the dam. So no, I don't think it was, I don't recall it being discussed or vetted out. I don't know if anyone else, Lou or Casey or Rick or Ray, think we had a conversation about it. I don't think we did.
No, I don't recall any. You're right, Kristen. I agree with your accounting of what was discussed back then.
Yeah, it was more discussion about the long-term impact of the township owning the two dams.
Yeah.
So I'll open it up to the board as to what questions you might have on this.
Has anybody contacted the recreation department to determine whether they could use it, and especially since it's adjacent to the trail system?
Mr. Chairman, I can speak to that if I may.
Go ahead, Rick.
Yes, I have spoken to both the Public Works Department and the Parks Department regarding any potential use of the boathouse. I don't think it makes a great deal of sense to dedicate the boathouse to the township unless we have a use for it, so that it's not sitting there vacant and become an attractive nuisance. The Parks Department has no use for it. The Public Works Department has no use for it. As Kristen already stated, access is very difficult, and currently the boathouse can only be accessed by crossing the dam, which is certainly not a safe condition. So at this point, I think it's been determined by staff at least that there is no viable use for the boathouse. We don't particularly want the boathouse and would prefer that whatever is done with the boathouse, it be transferred with the land and the dam, and not be dedicated to the township if the Board of Supervisors agrees.
Rick, the trail that comes in from the entrance to the North Hill Lake doesn't cross the dam, does it? Or does it?
Yes, it does. To get to the boathouse, it does. The trail itself, the main trail, does not cross the dam, but to get to the boathouse, you have to go off of that trail and cross the dam.
I don't remember crossing a dam to get to it, to be honest with you.
There's a bridge over it.
You can get around the back, but it's pretty difficult, and it's not part of the proposed trail system.
The steep hill on one side.
Yeah, the only viable way to get to it right now is to cross the dam.
Sean, I'm going to jump off.
I'll have to re-walk it.
Okay, Kristen, well, we'll keep this conversation going, and you can rejoin us for the other items that we need your help on later on. And then obviously we'll move on to the other agenda items if we exhaust the conversation here. See you in a bit. Robin, you had some questions, or have you kind of got the background now? Robin, you're on mute.
So that I don't make everyone else have to hear my dog. I think that this is a situation of tremendous amount of liability if we were to move forward. I think it's a lovely idea. I know that the PHMC has apparently made photographs historically. I just was talking to Kevin Pissner this week about creating something that would be more joyous than some of the issues that we've been addressing in the commission from an ordinance standpoint. And we started talking about documenting information as long as people have the ability to give us that information. I just think water, a boatyard, I just think it's way too dangerous, and the people who live there, they can make their own decisions, especially through the HOA, if for some reason they wanted to renovate it in some special way that would be still safe for them to do it. So I'm not in favor of keeping the boathouse, nor am I in favor of having the concern of the liability associated with it.
Okay, thank you. Other board member thoughts?
If I could ask them, what about our own historical commission? Has this issue been presented to them for their consideration and their advice?
They have access to the PHMC database, and that was what they thought they would get started in learning more about other things related to the Jerakian property as well. So it's just an initiative right now that we're starting. This week we'll be talking about it in our meeting this month, about how we can approach many of these other homes that were shied away by the ordinances that we had created initially, which were rather more onerous. But we're thinking about doing more of an outreach relationship with them, so that if people want to share the story of their historical property or story from what happened on their property, we're moving in that direction right now. And this discussion about the boathouse was the first thing that we discussed.
Can I add something?
Yeah. Who's this?
This is Ray.
Oh, hi, Ray.
How you doing, Robin?
I'm good, thanks.
I was talking with the caretaker today about the boathouse, and he said that there was a picture of it in the 1940s, but sometime between the 1940s and 1980, it burnt down completely. And the only thing that was standing was the foundation and some of the fireplace. And in 1999, he brought some Amish guys in, and they rebuilt the structure themselves. It's got a fiberglass roof. It's got the windows are from the side of the road that he found that just happened to fit in what they were doing. He cut some wood down on the property and made some beams inside of it. So, I mean, as it stands right now, there's nothing historic about the building at all. The foundation, maybe he's not even sure when the foundation, what era the original foundation was from. So, right now we've got it boarded up. I know that doesn't help in the ownership conversation that we're having right now, but just from historic perspective, I don't know how it came to be on the Army Corps' MOA. I think they just started to identify structures that were out there and listed them, whether they were historic or not, and made comments about it and said, the comment is it shall repair the resource by the town as required by the township. It doesn't say renovate or bring it back to any kind of condition. It just says repair it. It was a nuisance. It always has been a nuisance. Kids are always partying in there. I've known that for the last 20 years that I've known the property. They constantly were chasing people out of there. So it's just an attractive nuisance from our position. It doesn't mean that somebody can't make it into something. Rick is correct. It is hard to get to. I mean, currently now there's a little footbridge that crosses the dam that goes to the boathouse. But in the plans and even in the Army Corps information, that little footbridge is supposed to be removed because that's not historic either. So it is very difficult to get to the boathouse. You have to come down a steep slope on the other side to get there, and the trail system doesn't go by it. I'm not trying to make a case that the township shouldn't take it. I'm just trying to give you some context of what I know about the structure from the people that have lived there for over the years.
Thank you, Ray.
That's very helpful.
Are there any, Ashley or Hugh, any other questions or comments? John?
Well, this memorandum of understanding, which I just became aware of actually today, that was signed back in 2014 between Jirachian and the Army Corps of Engineers. They listed 26, they described them as contributing resources of the property that made it be historical, and it included the boathouse. They also included the boathouse bridge too as number one. So is that the bridge that crosses the weir over to the boathouse? Do you know, Ray?
It is not. I don't know how it got labeled Boathouse Bridge, but it's not really near the bridge, or it's not really near the dam at all, and it's not near the boathouse. It's actually an old stone arch on the old driveway that is north of the lake. Doesn't really go near the boathouse. The actual little bridge that crosses the dam is not even listed in the document. There's a plan that's attached that is referenced to all these numbers, this 1 through 26. The plan is not a part of the document, but if you look at the plan, it identifies where everything is. But there's a separate plan that was done that did not make it as an exhibit. I don't know if it's referred to, but the copy I have doesn't show it as an exhibit.
Thanks, Ray. Just to share my thoughts and comments, I did take a look at this over the weekend and just to locate it and understand the access to and from it. And I find it really hard to believe. First of all, I really agree with staff when they say it's hard for them to imagine a township use for this small structure. And the idea of having easements and any reasonable access to it, I could not see it when I looked at it. So I just see a liability and an attraction for trouble. And, personally, I don't support it being brought into township ownership. Obviously, that leaves the question of what the HOA would want to do with it. But, as far as the township's concerned, I think we should leave it as being something that is not brought into township ownership.
Well, I would tend to agree with that, but I would like to see the boathouse be retained. Hopefully, the homeowner association would take over ownership and keep it. That's my feeling on it.
I mean, I guess it would be their decision, though, John, right? They would have to look at it and agree what they could do with it and whether it was worth their cost and effort to maintain it and avoid the kind of troubles that it might attract. So if that's really would not be our decision, it would be the HOA's decision.
Well, I think that's kind of this, it's kind of the sad piece of this, honestly, because it is an older structure, and I know that it burned down, but it still has some history in West Goshen, and I completely understand that. But I'm in agreement with you, Sean. I think that at this point, it's probably in the township's best interest to not take on that liability, and then the HOA is going to do whatever they want to do. So.
Okay. So I don't know what, if Kristen was here, whether we'd want to take some kind of formal vote on this tonight, but since she's going to join the meeting later on, we can revisit this and ask for her opinion as to what the specific next step is relative to board action. And we can, if we need to vote later, we will. So at this point, I would like to hear if there's any public comment around the discussion that you've heard on the boathouse.
Sean, this is Doug, please. Question for Ray Grukowski. Ray, the footbridge that goes across the dam, was the removal of that discussed back in 2009 in preliminary approval and again in 2013? Was that always in the plan to remove that footbridge?
Yes, because that lake is not a flood control device. It's more aesthetic, but DEP wanted to make sure that if it overflowed safely. So in the we have a letter of authorization from DEP. It's more of a maintenance thing than it is an actual permit. But in the engineer's redesign, in order to safely overflow the dam, it needed to be larger, and that footbridge, from an engineering perspective, there's no way it could have stayed. So it was very specifically, if you said to save it today, I don't know how we could when you look at the dam repair plan for it. It just doesn't work.
Okay. And also, Ray, do you remember my father's opinion on that boathouse?
I remember, yeah, I do a little bit, Doug. I don't think he had a clear, let's keep it, let's not keep it. I know he thought it was a nice feature, and I know he liked to walk back there all the time. And I know that was a special place for him, Doug, I do. And but I don't think he had a clear it should stay or it should not. I think the conversation, from what I remember publicly, was more concerned about the liability of it at the time back in 2012, 2013 time period. And I do remember the township raising that concern.
I see. Yeah, I think his goal was more about the park as a whole and the plan as a whole. But you're right. There are a lot of memories back there. But thank you, Ray, for your input there.
Sure, Doug.
Are there any other public questions or comments about this boathouse? Okay, so what I'd like to do now is just table this until Kristen returns, and we can decide if there's any formal action we want to take tonight at that point. So Lou, Ray, I don't know if you want to stick around for that, or whether you'll hear the action or not later on.
Sean, we're going to jump off. I mean, Kristen told me that she was just going to open it up for discussion tonight. We've heard the discussion of whether you take action tonight, or it's not a burning issue right now. It's you can decide something next month or the month after, but I think I get the gist of what I've heard. So we'll jump off and we'll, regroup internally and figure out what to do with the boathouse. Doesn't sound like West Goshen Township is going to want ownership of it.
I think you're right. Thanks, Lou. Thanks, Ray.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on our agenda, we're going to hold off, as I said, on the Westchester University overlay and our sign ordinance update until Kristen is back. So at this point, maybe we can try and deal with a couple of these other issues. So discussion and possible approval of Resolution 11/2021, establishment of a handicapped parking spot in the village of Shannon. Casey or Rick, who's on point for that one?
Sure, I can jump in and then Rick can follow up. We received a request from 3 residents of the village of Shannon. There are no handicap parking spots near their homes, not within many blocks. So we scoped out where all 3 properties are townhomes pretty much right together. Right across the street is the optimum spot. I checked it out, and so did Rick. I think Sergeant Greiser did as well from traffic in the police department. And this was the the optimum spot for those three residents to have access to a handicap spot. So Rick, anything more to add?
Rick, are you frozen?
Are you unmuted?
I think you're muted somehow, Rick.
Partially.
There you go.
No, I shouldn't be.
Oh, you're good. We can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm having troubles with my connection, so I turned my camera off.
Perfect.
Yeah, I did cut out for a little bit there, but if I got the gist of what Casey was saying, in order to put a handicap spot in proximity to the three folks who requested it, their side of the street is split up by driveways in a way that does not provide enough room for a handicap parking space. We need about an 18-foot to 20-foot long space to accommodate a handicap space to parallel park on a public street. And the place to do that would be across the street because that has the amount of length necessary and is the closest area that is in proximity to the requesters. So that's why we put it at 511 Cork instead of on the other side of the street.
Are the residents okay with the location? Do they understand where it is? The folks who would want to use it?
Yeah, one of the gentlemen, Mr. Reiser, I believe, was kind of the lead on contacting me about it. But once we proposed that location, they were very pleased with the location, given the proximity right across from the three homes.
And are the other residents in the area aware of this request and that this will become a handicap parking space?
The gentleman who contacted me said he has personally spoken with pretty much every neighbor within 2 blocks.
Is that reliable, Casey, in terms
No,
of?
but yeah, I mean, we haven't done a handicap spot since 2007. We don't get these requests very often. If the board wants to hold off, we can. I can put out a letter to the entire neighborhood, see if we get any pushback, but there are no handicap spots within blocks of this area, so we thought it was appropriate.
Other board member questions, please?
Yeah, just a clarification now. 3 residents asked for a handicap spot, but there's only going to be 1 spot that we're discussing?
Correct.
So how is that going to work? So 3 residents want to use 1 spot? How's that going to work?
Well, they agreed to share the spot. It's a public street, so it's open to any access. We can't fill the entire block with handicap spots, so the one was per Rick and Sergeant Greiser a reasonable number.
That's what I'm trying to understand. So is the demand greater than what's being proposed here is what I'm getting at.
Well, again, we can't fill the entire area with handicap parking spots because they're a minority of the property owners there. So they also can park in their own driveways, so they wouldn't be using it all the time.
Okay, now the location is at 511 Court Circle. Now the resident who lives at 511, do they agree to that? That's
well,
that's the location on the ordinance here, on the resolution.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct.
My question is, the resident who lives at 511 Cork, do they agree with the handicap parking spots being at their location?
I don't believe we've contacted them. I know Sergeant Greiser has been in touch with the property owner many times about many issues. So.
Right. Well, that's my question. Does the homeowner there at the location where this is being proposed agree with this handicap parking spot to be in front of their?
I don't know, John. I'm not sure.
Okay, I think that we should probably reach out to them. I think that's what we're getting at here.
Okay. Well, I mean, that property owner has 2 spots plus a 2-car garage in the back, so it's a public street. I mean, I'll contact the whole neighborhood if you want.
I think I would like to have a little bit, make sure the residents support it and the specific specific property that this will be in front of understands that it's coming and would not object.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, we'll do. We'll table it till June at this point.
Okay, thanks, Casey. Let's see. Next on the agenda.
May I ask a question about that real fast?
Go ahead, Doug.
Casey, so that's a public street. A township owns a street. So the parking spot would be on the street, not off street, correct?
Correct. It's
Okay,
it's an on-street public spot, right?
Okay, so because it's a public street, okay, I was thinking that this spot was going to be off street somewhere on
No,
private.
we don't have jurisdiction over private alleys or driveways or anything. So this is on a public.
I understand. Thank you, Casey. Thank
Sure.
you.
Okay, thanks, Doug. Okay, let's move on the agenda now and talk about the discussion of revised draft residential property resale ordinance. Bill, is that you?
I believe so. Thank you, Sean. I'm going to keep my camera off because I as well am having some connection issues. So actually, after the last meeting, Robin had reached out to me with some concern that we were really trying to address some of the sewer issues with this ordinance. So her and I talked, and the very next day, John and her had contacted me, and we, the three of us worked as a team and put this new proposal together. I basically piggybacked this ordinance off of what I was doing when I was a director of community development at Taliesin. And while I was there, Taliesin was under a sewer moratorium, so they had to do certain things to try and improve their standing with DEP for infiltration issues and whatnot. So part of that was a resale ordinance that specifically looked at infiltration issues like we're trying to address with this ordinance. So the three of us, we met 3 times, and I think we came up with a pretty reasonable product that could be accepted. This even addresses Act 133 of 2016, which was passed by the Commonwealth to protect buyers from having to be not being able to go to settlement, or buyers and sellers not being able to go to settlement due to a municipal resale certificate. Under Act 133, that provides 12 months to make repairs, or a time period that's negotiated between the municipality and the buyer if the seller can't make those repairs prior to settlement. So this certificate would not hold up any type of sale in West Goshen Township. So basically, as I had talked to Robin and John, a very important thing that I've come in, even when we did the rental ordinance, we involved stakeholders. So in this case, we sent a copy of the draft to the Suburban Realtors Alliance, which is the PAC for the realtors in this area, and the 5-county Metro Philadelphia area. And we sent a copy of this ordinance to them. And the CEO and president, Jamie Ridge, from Suburban Realtors Alliance, was very appreciative of the fact that West Goshen would allow them a seat at the table, because they say often municipalities basically thumb their nose at realtors and don't really care what realtors have to say. But in this case, they really appreciated the fact that we brought them in and made them part of the process. They appreciated the fact that we provided a list of things that buyers should look for on their own. They also appreciated the fact that we advised them in 2 locations that this should not be used as in lieu of a third party home inspection. So they like that. And the very last paragraph of his email was that while we typically do not endorse or support resale UNO ordinances because of the onerous and duplicative requirements they often include, this is a draft we feel could be used as a model for other municipalities. So I thought that was huge, that they thought that the West Goshen draft should be a model that's used in Pennsylvania. So I think that, again, I think that what we've come up with addresses a lot of the concerns, because we did speak with Mike Moffa, and I see he's here tonight, and I had conversations with Dave Woodward about the infiltration that we get during these storms, and our numbers go, they almost double, if not go more than double during a heavy rain. So, the things that we're looking for in this is it's a self-certification from the buyer that they have, or excuse me, the homeowner will self-certify that they have smoke detectors on each floor in each bedroom. And then we as a township will look at four things and four things only. Make sure that they have the address on the house, which is very important, house and mailbox, which is extremely important because, mere minutes is huge in an emergency situation. We're going to make sure that some pumps and condensate lines aren't connected to are not connected to the public sewer system and don't drain, and that they drain to the exterior of the home. We would check that roof drains are not connected to the public sewer system and discharge in a local manner. And finally, we would check that sewer vents and cleanouts are not broken and that they're properly capped so that stormwater is not entering into this public system. We actually had a home on Friday that they thought was a water line leak, that Dave Woodward actually found a vent, the person's sewer vent. They probably just ran it over with their lawnmower and never fixed it. So that means every time it rains, that water is going right down into our system. So Mike Mava was sending that gentleman a letter, but we would look for things like that through this inspection. So again, this was a team effort between Robin and John, and I think we came up with a product that people can live with in West Goshen, as the Suburban Realtors Alliance has already endorsed it. So I was very happy with that. But I guess we can have some questions.
Thanks, Bill. Just so I'm clear, so we had a board discussion on this, I think, at our April workshop, and generally it was not supported by the board. And what you have done since then is basically to only have a very few items require inspections for the resale certification. And everything else has just become kind of a be aware of checklist at the back of the ordinance. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And
Yeah, the idea is that we're going to simplify what appeared to be very onerous from some of the folks who were in the audience in our last meeting. And when John and Bill basically identified from their professional experiences those four items, it seemed like those are the ones that were mostly challenging for the township to deal with, especially if the water was going into in an unlawful, being discharged in an unlawful manner. And then we also just decided that we were going to make everybody who got this document or wanted to have information could still look into this as a checklist, whether they did the work or not. At least they would have some ideas of what they could be doing to protect their homes and from a safety standpoint. And it was great to be able to work with John and Bill on that. I have no experience in the two things that they do.
Okay, the one thing I would like to comment on is the sewer system situation. And as you all know, I am on the sewer authority, and we have described and aware of this terrible burden that we have when we get these storm events, and the fact that the sewer flow, goes from 4 to 5 million gallons a day to 9 to 10 for a couple of days kind of thing. So there is a lot of ingress. So whether that's through either connections that are made into the sanitary system by the properties, or whether it's infiltration in the lateral connections or in the mains or whatever else, it is a problem. However, I don't think the sewer authority has kicked it around yet to decide how it really wants to address it. Because, for example, 30% of our flows don't even come from West Goshen Township. They come from East Goshen, West Whiteland, West Town. So, we have to figure out, is the problem in our older neighborhoods, and is it an infiltration problem? Is it really inflow connections from residential properties throughout the township? Is the commercial properties the big problem? We just don't know. And I don't think until the sewer authority has done some effort to get some data to analyze where it should focus in terms of recommendations to the Township Board of Supervisors, what should be done to address this economic burden that we have by having to manage this groundwater ingress. I just don't think it's, this is too much of a shotgun approach to say, well, at least let's start by having everyone on a resale of a property have to do an inspection, because it may not be helping, it may not be where the main part of the problem is. So I think it's premature to think that this is really the best approach at this point for that particular problem. So I don't think I'm persuaded that we need to change our original view, or my original view is not changed. I don't think at this point. I think we did hear from enough residents about this being more of a burden and a handicap for private to private sellers. It's not a full comprehensive inspection list. A buyer should certainly make sure they avail themselves of a full home inspection, looking at a lot more things than are on our list. And I'm just not convinced that we should move forward with it.
Well, I heard your opinion, Sean. Respectfully disagree. I think we have to start somewhere. No question, there is a situation we have within a township where we have a number of residences which have their stormwater connections tied into the sanitary sewer system, which is contributing to the doubling of the influx to the sanitary sewer system that we have. So we do have to start somewhere, and this is a good place to start. And we will not be in a position to request a similar ordinance to be done by other townships that we partner with in our sanitary sewer system if we don't have such a ordinance in place. So I think this is something we really do need to pursue. What we've done is we've taken this, it's a resale use and occupancy certification, not a resale certification. It's a use and occupancy certification that only addresses three specific and very narrow items. Number one, smoke detectors, which I think is a life-saving devices that should be installed within homes, and the identification of the house for those who call for fire or emergency response. If they can't find you, they can't help you. So I think that is very a reasonable requirement to have. And then, of course, the final one is the one I just talked about the stormwater tie-in. We have an opportunity here to make some changes. And I think this is a tool in the toolbox that we have as a township to make the adjustment that we need to make for all of us. Otherwise, I think we're looking for a greater cost that we're going to have to expend on our sewer system to be able to accommodate these tremendous influxes of stormwater, which occurs whenever we have these big rainstorms, which we seem to be having more and more often. So we're going to have to start somewhere, and I believe this is a good place to start.
May I share my thoughts?
Go ahead, Ashley.
So like Sean said, I know that we had this conversation at our last April meeting, and then I was not persuaded either. And I have to agree with Sean. I'm still not persuaded that this is the way to address this problem, because I think by creating this small little list of reasons that the township would need to come into your home to make sure that it's safe is sort of putting, it's like putting lipstick on a pig, sort of. It's getting us what we actually want and creating a little list that makes it seem like it's justified. I'm not a person that believes that the township should be involved in private real estate sales. And I think we have started somewhere. I think that by upping the residents' rates to $190 every quarter is starting somewhere. And I think that, I think that we should stick with the decision we made last time.
Thank you, Ashley. Hugh, would you like to share your opinion?
I think that it's a necessary evil. I think the bill has done a good job in reworking the ordinance to the point where it really is not onerous. So I tend to be in favor of it as it's presented here.
Well,
I mean,
and if I could just speak to Sean's specific issue, the way that you portray the situation with the sewer authority is significantly different than what we're trying to do. We're trying to go to residents when we know that they might have information about or they may not know any information about a sump pump that's in their building when they move in. These are very different reasons for doing this, because we also wanted this to be an opportunity. We're not going into people's homes to tell them that they need to do everything at the back of this page. This was just a suggestion list that has been utilized in other situations for people to remember that they should be checking on certain things to keep themselves safe. We're not going into their homes to tell them what to do. We only have 4 items that we want to make sure that people are aware of and have the ability to respond to it.
So I have a question. If you could talk to the residents right now and our entire constituency and the people that voted to elect us, do you think that they would be in favor of this ordinance?
Well, if I go back 25 years when I first moved into my home, I was a first-time homeowner. I had an old house. I had a lot of old mechanical equipment in it. And all I got was my insurance company telling me I needed to have my electricity box rewired because it was extremely dangerous. So I kind of refer to that life experience and wishing I had better advice, because the inspector who wanted to make sure that my roof was okay didn't really give me much information in terms of what I should be expecting as a new homeowner.
Well, I think we will have an opportunity to hear from those residents. If we go ahead and decide to pursue this ordinance, it has to be publicized, and we'll hear from those folks. And I think I'm ready to make a good argument for its value. And I'll make an analogy. People didn't like it when they started requiring seatbelts in cars, and I get it. It was an invasion of privacy and stuff, but it saved lives. And has smoke detectors at people's homes that are functioning, that'll save lives. To have ID numbers on your house so your ambulance can find you when you call them, I think that saves lives. To eliminate stormwater tie-ins to a sanitary sewer system there, that's going to save us tax dollars.
I just want to challenge back on you there, John. The analogy is okay, but it's not the best one. I mean, how many people change their batteries every October in their smoke detectors? Are we going to insist that, you can be pulled over for not wearing a seatbelt and fined? Are we going to say we need to check your smoke detector batteries every year? Because that's the way you ensure that 52 weeks a year, somebody's got the right system that's working in place. And Bill, how long has the building code required smoke detectors, on every floor and in every bedroom? Is it since the early 90s?
No, that came into effect with the UCC, with the every bedroom. They've actually now you have to do carbon monoxide on the basement.
The new construction since when was that then, Bill? The late 90s, when it's been a mandatory requirement for new construction?
2004.
Yeah. And again, my point on the sewer system is this is no guarantee of doing anything to solve the problem. We don't have data. 30% isn't even in West Goshen. 50% may come from commercial properties in terms of it. We don't know whether the sewer main is a big source of our infiltration. Until we analyze it and get some data to justify it to residents, I just don't see how you can say this is the right thing to do.
I agree.
Well, I disagree that this is not an attempt to go in the right direction, Sean, and I think you would agree that there are a number of instances where residences are contributing to the problem, and this is an attempt. It's not going to solve the entire problem, that's true, but it's certainly going to start addressing the problem, and I think that's a valid point.
More trouble than the results that you're thinking you're going to get. I think you're asking for more trouble, and you know why? Because I've heard from a lot of residents myself about this when it was on our agenda last month, and they were mad, and a lot of people were mad about it, and I'm not making that up.
Yeah,
so, for us to sit here and throw this around is fine, but I'm here to do a job, and that's to represent the people in West Goshen that elected me. And I know for a fact that a lot of them would be extremely unhappy about this. And I think it's overreach. And I'm surprised that this board is leaning towards doing this. I'm surprised.
Well, we all have to have our opinion, actually, so that's fair enough. You know, there are reasons for things. So at this point, we had the discussion back in April. We've had another good discussion tonight. Does someone want to make a motion to move this forward in terms of advertising it or for adoption?
I'd like to make a comment.
Go ahead, Hugh.
Sean, in reference to the smoke detectors, the ones manufactured nowadays that are being installed have a 10-year life on the battery, not a 1 year. Just for your general information.
Yeah. Well, I have to change my batteries every year in mine, Hugh. Maybe I need to get the 10-year ones.
They sell them at Home Depot, Sean.
Yeah. You know, my wallet's tightly shut, so I'll have to pry it open.
I'll tell you what, but I'll pick some up for you. How's that sound?
Okay, so my suggestion is if there is a board member that feels that this draft ordinance is ready to be moved forward for, for advertising for adoption. I believe that's the process here, right, Casey? That's the step we're at right now. If someone wanted to do that.
That's correct.
Feel free to make that motion.
Well, I'm going to make the motion.
Yeah, and I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Are there any other board comments about the revised draft residential property resale ordinance being moved for public advertisement? Are there any public comments?
Sean,
can I make a comment?
this is Doug.
Go ahead, Doug.
Is there room to maybe further modify the ordinance to bring yourself and Ashley on with this, or has it been modified to the bare bones, or?
I guess, I believe I've given reasons why none of what's required or is included, from my perspective, is worthwhile. And I believe, as Ashley said, the residents object to it, and I think that's there are fair reasons why they do object to it. So I don't think I would support it.
Right. I mean, you have a point. If enough people are really upset about this, and it's not absolutely necessary, maybe there's other ways to address these concerns that John has. So just some thoughts. Thank you.
Hi, Sean, can I?
Go ahead, Tina.
I just had some, Bill, you did a good job with this ordinance here, but if I can just inject a few comments that I have relative to it, whether it goes forward or not. I just had some comments just to clarify some of the issues on there. Just starting with the resale use and occupancy certificate. Under smoke detectors, I don't know if you want to include electronic or battery operated. And then also under West Goshen, the 4 areas that the West Goshen is going to inspect in number 3. At the end, I would put sewer system and discharge per the regulations. And then also under the certificate of occupancy, I would put the title of the person doing the inspection within the West Goshen department. And then on the actual buyer's recommendation page, I would add in number 17 that say to also, if we're going to include the sewers, to inspect the sewer line laterals from the house to the public street to make sure that they're operational. And I would also say that bold at the bottom, that West Goshen Township recommends you obtain, I added a private and certified third-party home inspector company. If you're going to do it, then you should actually have it, make sure it's certified company that does it. And then the other things I had were just minor relative to the actual document itself, which was on the 3rd page under 85.3 resale and occupancy inspection, which would be B3. Again, at the end, I just said in accordance with the regulations. And then 85-4A, there's typo there. It should, they should be taken out. And that's all. Just some comments. If it is going to go through, it should be clarified. I'm not saying one way or the other, just if it is going to go through, there's some clarifications.
Yeah, Tina, most of those were clarifications, but I did hear you mention an operational check of the sewer lateral, which is going to involve a lot more cost.
Right.
I mean, that is a
Well,
substantial change from just a home inspection and looking for tie-ins. That requires, a professional service now.
I agree, but a lot of inspectors are doing that as part of the inspection. It's part of the fee that they do when they do the inspection for the buyers.
Yeah, but that fee is now going to be paid by the seller as part of this process, and it's no longer just a simple fee from the township. It's going to substantially change, I think, the cost to do it.
It's actually the buyer that's doing it.
Is it the buyer you're proposing pays for this bill, or is it the seller?
The buyer pays for the inspection,
The buyer
Right.
pays for the home inspection.
right? Which includes that.
There's a lot of confusion. So could you
The seller.
clarify? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, John.
No, I'm just saying, could you clarify this stuff? There's just the three basic items that this resale use and occupancy is focusing on. That's fire alarms, home ID, and tie-in between the storm sewer and sanitary sewer system. That's it. The other items there on the back of the page are just recommendations. So this not load up, the recommendations. Otherwise, people are going to start saying that that's part of the inspection. It's not. It's just a friendly recommendation to the buyer. This is something you may want to take a look at. But if you really want to take a look at this and do it right, you need to get yourself a third-party inspection done. And that's one of the things that the Suburban Realtors Association was pretty keen about. They said, we think this is a great idea that the township is recommending that there be a home inspection done here by the buyer as part of the transaction process. And they thought this was a great template, in fact, to be emulated by other townships like ours. So,
well, I would hope realtors are advising their clients on the buyer's side to do home inspections. I hope they're not ignoring that and saying, "Oh, it's the township that wants you to do a home inspection." But Bill, to my question, who pays for the inspection, the seller or the buyer?
Generally, Sean, the seller pay, well, the home inspection, the buyer pays for when they buy the house. But
This ordinance requires the seller to pay the cost of inspection. Yes.
The seller would pay whatever fee. Well, I mean, it could be negotiated between the buyer and seller who's paying the fee. But when I was in the business, my clients, if they were selling a house, they paid the fee to the municipality.
Okay.
And I will tell you, just to give you a heads up, a lot of people right now are, because of the way the market is, they're not doing home inspections. They're skipping that process just to have a leg up on competition.
Well, buyer beware. So are there any other questions from the public relative to this?
Well, I just wanted to make a quick comment. Bill, you did do a good job with this, and I really do appreciate Robin and John that you took initiative on this and sought to kind of revise it to something better. I know that my comments were negative. I'm sorry. I will be voting no, but I do appreciate the work that you did.
Yeah, it's fair enough, because we know at the workshop we did have takeaways where individual board members wanted to follow up with Bill. So you've brought back what you believe was something that was different. So I just want to check, are there any other questions from the public?
Just one last final comment, just to make it clear. It's also written here in the ordinance that there is a temporary use and occupancy that could be issued in the case of somebody who wants to just flip the house, not do any work at all on it, just wants to move it. And like Bill said, that's like the way this market is right now. People are just looking to sell it, and they're selling it quickly. So there is a capability under this ordinance to allow that to happen.
Yeah, I wanted to model part of Act 133 into this ordinance, just so that we showed that we were acknowledging the Commonwealth's law that was passed in 2016.
Hey, Bill, can I just get a little bit more clarification about the enforceability of this? So you're saying that there is a law that prevents any municipality from actually preventing the sale of the home if the seller doesn't meet these certain requirements, but what happens then?
So there would be the temporary UNO would be good for 12 months because that's actually spelled out in Act 133 that the homeowner would have 12 months to make their repairs or an agreed upon time between the buyer and the municipality. Now, obviously, the law is 12 months. So at that point, if they were in violation of the temporary UNO, we could revoke that and or issue citations to correct the situation.
Okay, thanks.
And how much of a fee are we talking about here, Bill?
I mean, that would be determined by the board. My guess would be $50. We charge $40 for the rental inspection, and I would probably want to set the fee different from the rental inspection fee so that when checks are coming in, there's a little delineation there. These may take a little more time than the rental inspections because of the scope. The rental inspections actually don't take that long. So I'm thinking $50 is a fair fee for this. There are municipalities that charge $150 for an inspection like this. Talmenson's fee schedule, it was $150 for a single family dwelling. And I believe it was maybe $130 for a townhouse. They cut a little bit of a break for a townhouse, but my suggestion would be $50.
Okay.
If we were to discover a property that had a connection into the sanitary sewer from their stormwater drains and we issued a notice of violation, how long would they have to correct the issue?
Well, that would be determined by us. We would grant them generally our notice of violation is 30 days to make a repair. Now, we would have to involve Kristen in that simply because Act 133 says that you got to give them 12 months. So I think we would have to involve Kristen in that. Now, to be quite honest with you, I don't think that you're going to have a seller or maybe not even a seller, but a buyer who's going to say, okay, well, I'm going to sit on this for 12 months knowing that I'm putting water down the sanitary system and, causing a burden onto the system. And there are sellers out there. And even when I've done the rental inspections, the folks didn't even know that they weren't allowed to do this. They just thought, oh, okay, I can just connect it into this pipe. So people weren't even aware that that's where there's something going until I did the inspection.
Well, okay, thanks, Bill. I mean, just to Doc White's comment earlier, I do believe that the sewer authority needs to understand where its problem is and, what the best mechanism is to address it. And, this might be part of a solution down the road, but I'm not convinced we know it is one today. So are there any other public comments that we've not heard from that someone would like to make? So we have a motion and a second tonight. So we'll take a roll call vote. Ashley?
No.
John?
Yes. Aye.
Hugh?
Aye.
Robin? Robin, you're on mute. Sorry.
Yep, no problem. Aye.
I vote no. So carries. Casey, you have a approval to move that forward.
3-2 vote. We'll get it in final draft form with Kristen, and it's the board's, well, the three of you, Kristen and Bill, remind me, this does not have to go to PC?
No, my suggestion would be to add it to your property maintenance code as a section of your property maintenance code that does not need to go to your planning commission or to the county planning commission. It does have to be advertised 7 days prior to a public hearing. So yeah, we probably won't have it back to you for your regular meeting in May, probably your first either work session in June or regular meeting in June.
Okay, do the three board members have a preference, June 1st or the June regular meeting at this point?
It doesn't matter to me.
Okay. Okay.
I do have one more thing I want to say about this is that in the constant opportunity now that we have this great website and we have a great newsletter, we did talk about socializing this within the communities so that people who were made aware of the fact that they might have to have this happen, we could draft a explanation and a better understanding so that when they got the information, they would be able to understand whether or not this was something that they wanted to go through or what they needed to know in order to go through it.
Certainly.
So we're going to compromise, make everything kind of comparative so that it's going to look a lot like what's in the document that we share with you already. Really is the focus of making sure that people take advantage of this information so that they can take care of themselves without us being involved. And I just wanted to be clear about one item, which was when it comes to the, I think John may have said this already, but that it's the seller who will self-certify on the smoke detectors. We're not going to go in and check this. So we're basically assuming that they're telling us the truth. So it's not as an intrusive situation as maybe some people have thought it would be.
Wait. So what do you mean? I thought we were inspecting for 3 specific things: numbers on house or mailbox, and the presence of smoke detectors that are working on the floors and in the bedrooms, and the sewer connections.
Right.
Yeah,
We're
but
not inspecting.
That's the point though, is in the middle of the document, the first document above the area about the township being verified for these 4 items, that's where the smoke detector information is listed. But it is self-certified, meaning they just tell us that yes, we're in compliance with the smoke detectors in our home.
So the inspector
That's
is
all
not
the seller.
accessing
That's all the seller just has to tell us, that they have compliant smoke detectors.
Well,
It
I don't
it
agree
really
with that.
should it really should be pointed out that the ordinance, the way it's presented here tonight, is much less onerous than the one that was originally discussed. And you could almost take a point by point in letting people know that there was a reduction in the onerousness of the ordinance.
Okay, well, we voted and it's moving forward. So whatever the final version is that's drafted, we'll review it at the June meeting or whatever.
Yeah, should we do this at the last meeting in June, just allow the digital newsletter to go out and have some explanation of what's being considered here and why?
I think that'd be a good idea, yes.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
this
we'll
way
do
we
it
would have
at the regular June meeting then.
Yeah, regular one, yes.
Sean, can I add one thing?
Go ahead.
I was wondering if we should run this by the sewer authority too, for their comments, suggestions, opinion.
Well, absolutely. We can raise it at tomorrow night's meeting about what happened tonight, and we can ask whether they believe it's the appropriate step or what else needs to be done. Because as I said in my comments earlier, I don't believe this is addressing anywhere near the issues that we have with infiltration.
Yeah,
Okay.
I appreciate that if we can add that to the agenda.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's move on. Let's move on to, I see Kristen, welcome back. We've got some guests here. Let's go to the Westchester University Overlay Ordinance, a discussion of that latest draft of that, or what changes are being proposed to it.
The last version that we had a public meeting and discussed was the creation of 4 different sub-districts within the PUC. And in PUC 4, there was discussion about allowing student housing as a use. Definition of student housing, we had discussion about to go beyond just being owned by the university to also being owned by a private entity and leased to or managed by the school or university. So that was the last draft, was that I think there was consensus to allow within the PUC 4 the student housing with the broader definition to be not just university owned, but some other private entity that had an affiliation or some sort of management contract with the university. That was where this ordinance was last discussed with you. And I think I had pointed out at that point in time, and I'm not saying anything out of school here, that the borough of Westchester, that was the stumbling block. They had obviously their version of the ordinance, which creates where the super block is, creates a new zoning district. And because it's all contained within one area, it's not sub-districts the way your ordinance is. Their planning commission made a recommendation to move it forward to Borough Council. Borough Council had a first hearing on it and decided to table it when they knew that you guys were considering putting student housing in that district. So that's where things sort of left or stopped. And then I guess the university reached out to Casey and asked that you reconsider putting the ordinance back on track, getting it back to a hearing step or stage, and I guess eliminating student housing. And the one thing I'm not clear about is, are you eliminating all student housing, even if it's university owned, or are you considering eliminating student housing only if it's built by a private entity? That's one thing I'm not totally clear about.
Kristen and Mr. Chairman, if I can jump in, my discussion with the university, including Mr. Villela, who's on the line, was to eliminate all housing out of the PUC4. That was very clearly stated to me.
So, and I apologize, the draft that was provided still had, we have to make sure we were clear on the definition of student housing, because there is a definition today. So we need to go back and, again, that definition had various iterations depending upon what you wanted to allow and where. So we would have to go back and decide exactly if you like the existing definition or not. And then the draft would have to be revised to take it out of the PUC4 use. That's the only change that would be made. So under the use regulations for district class 4, which is under paragraph 84-135D, we would take out the new paragraph student housing. So that would be the only change that I guess the university is proposing that you make to it.
Will we still need a definition of student housing if it's eliminated from any of these districts?
Are there any dorms? Well, I call them dorms, but because your definition is basically a dorm. Are there any currently located in West Goshen Township? Yeah. Okay. You probably could get rid of it then.
Well, we do have the edge in there, right? So that would qualify as a building owned and managed by a private entity with student housing. No?
But the edge is not, the edge has no contractual, the way student housing is defined today, the edge does not meet that. The edge came in as a multifamily dwelling. The way that we propose to amend it, the edge still wouldn't meet that definition because they don't have a contractual relationship or arrangement with the university today.
Okay, so what prevents an edge 2 being built with this overlay? Where there is no contractual arrangement?
It would be, number one, if you take student housing out, it wouldn't meet your definition. I mean, it would meet your definition of student housing the way you propose, and it's not going to be allowed. And multifamily is not allowed in this either underlying district or any part of the PUC.
Correct.
Okay.
So whether you classify it as student housing with a refined definition, or whether you classified it as it got approved, which is as a multifamily dwelling, it's not allowed in either the underlying zoning district or the PUC districts.
Okay. Okay, so the idea here is that by eliminating the roadblock that student housing presented, both in terms of getting a document that worked from a language perspective and also potentially from wider collaboration with the borough, if we were there then to move forward with that as not an option in PUC4, we believe we'd previously addressed lots of the other issues that we had originally had as a board with the ordinance, and this was the only remaining one. I believe that's correct. Board members, Kristen?
I believe that to be the case. I think we had worked through all the other issues.
Yeah. Board member comments?
So where we're at this point is to eliminate student housing and anywhere in any of the PUC overlay. And also we're going to eliminate the definition of student housing as it presently is being, well, the present document. Is that correct?
Yeah, you could actually eliminate the definition completely from your zoning ordinance because you don't have that anywhere within the township.
Okay, well, that would make sense to me.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, this is Brian. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, Brian. Yep, go ahead.
I did submit a revised version of the ordinance that removed student housing as a permitted use in the PUC4. I did not remove the definition of student housing because I knew that was something that you and Kristen were going to want to look at to decide how you wanted to deal with that globally. But in reality, I agree with what's been said. It could be removed. That's the township's prerogative.
Okay, thank you.
Sean,
Go ahead, Hugh.
would, by having no provision at all for it, could we run afoul of the fact that we don't have provision for it, that some of the Supreme Court rulings have said you have to provide for everything?
It might fit under the definition of an education. I mean, we'd have to look, Hugh. I don't want to say right now. I mean, I think I will. If you want to define student housing as your traditional dorms where it's owned by the college or the school or the university, I think we can keep a definition in. And that would be my recommendation. That student housing be more along the lines of residence halls, dormitories, that kind of thing. But we can define it. I mean, I guess then you begs the question of where you're going to allow it. I mean, these are the districts where you would allow it if you were going to have it. I mean, I don't know of any other. I guess there is a campus. There's a satellite campus on McDermott Drive in your industrial district. You don't allow it there. I mean, it's not an easy answer. I mean, if we're gonna define it, you're right. We probably should allow it somewhere, but I don't have a suggestion for where you're gonna want to allow it. The logical place is in one of these districts. So.
Did that answer your question, Hugh?
Sort of.
I guess.
I mean, university people are here. They don't have an intention, at least right now, to try to put a dorm within West Goshen. I mean,
I mean, if it solves the problem of the impasse that we've reached right now by eliminating it, as we know, ordinances can be changed. So if down the road, as part of master planning, some sense comes to the borough and ourselves with regard to these students have to live somewhere, you know, we do have the PUC class 4 areas somewhere that we could push, you know, reinstitute it as an idea down the road if it became the best solution for all concerned. So just for right now, the idea of moving forward with the amount of work we've put into getting this far, eliminating the student housing and pushing on with this ordinance seems to me a reasonable point to be. Do other board members agree or disagree?
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time and money on this. Just get it going.
But I hate to mess things up, board members, but I have one last question that I think we might want to consider. When I look at the size of PUC Class 2 and the PUC Class 4 overlay areas, they are bigger, when they're combined, they are bigger than the super block in the borough. Are we comfortable that the size of PUC Class 4, which stretches from Rosedale all the way down to Snyder Avenue, encompassing all of Carter Drive, is what needs to be included at this point? We have a lot of small businesses in that area. We have a lot of variety of commercial activity. So it's I believe it's thriving. I don't know if Casey could comment on that. Or do we have any, is there a lot of unoccupied buildings there or vacancies?
Not to my knowledge, no. Most of it's the Artisans Exchange and the small businesses down on Carter.
Sean.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Does it include the residential area down there too? Between High Street and Rosedale and then down Matlack?
It doesn't include that residential area between Matlack and High Street, Hugh. So Junta Lane and Anthony Lane are excluded from Class 2.
Right. And the PUC is on the east side of Matlack. I'm sorry if I.
Yeah, there's 20
Thank you.
properties listed there. There's 20 properties, and they're all commercial, or actually 12 of the 20 are already currently owned by the university out of the 20 properties listed in the PUC 4 class 4 area. So over half of them are already university. How far, where would you think about cutting off the line, Sean?
Well, there's no natural break on Carter Drive. I mean, I was looking at where Junta Lane cuts into Matlack, and if you went across east to west from there, just remove the end of Carter Drive and all the small properties that Casey was just describing down there from it. But again, this is just a thought. It's something that's thriving in West Goshen, and if it gets swallowed up into a master plan, that's just the consequence. We need the board to be aware of that could be an outcome of this. All right, are there any, does someone want to make a motion then? Kristen, we're at the point where we want to advertise the final ordinance for adoption.
Yeah, I have to think about which, I think the ordinance without student housing was the one that was submitted to the county planning. So I think you could authorize advertisement for hearing.
Okay, so does someone on the board want to make that motion then?
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So are there any final board member questions or comments about the Westchester University overlay ordinance moving forward for advertisement for adoption?
Can I just ask a couple of questions for clarification? Kristen, I think you'd be able to help, I think. Can you clarify the event and the date for when the university will have to present its university campus plan? Is that when they decide they want to build and they approach the board, the commission with a conditional use application, or can they do that at any time to set the university campus plan?
No, it's part of a conditional use application. So if they want to build any new buildings or change the use of buildings to have any of the uses that are called out in this ordinance, they have to submit a conditional use application. One component of the conditional use application is a master plan and all the various studies that go with it. The housing study, the parking study, all the different studies.
Parking, yeah, there's like 7 of them.
Housing report, yeah, all that. So the master plan is one submission requirement when they file a conditional use application seeking to build a new building. It's the use part of it, it's the zoning use. But it would be if they want to build a new building or they want to change the use of an existing building to be something something that the university wants or needs for its campus.
So theoretically, we may not see a university campus plan for several years until the university decides they want to build or change the classification of a building they currently own. Is that correct?
That's correct. But remember that if the borough goes forward with it, if they want to do something in the borough, that the borough's ordinance also requires a master plan, and it's not going to just contain the property within the borough. So, it might be that they have a need to build a dormitory in the super block. And so that's the triggering event that requires them to file a conditional use application and a master plan in the borough, which would then encompass property within West Goshen as well. So you'll also then be included in that process.
Okay.
Kristen, do you know if we eliminate the student housing and move forward with this without it, would the borough move back in line with this whole process?
I think so. I mean, I think they 100% fully supported it. Their planning commission definitely endorsed it. And the stumbling block was the student housing and the concern about the impact that would have upon the residential neighborhoods. So I haven't had a conversation since. And I don't know, John, if you reached out to Mike Perone or Brian, if you've had any sense of what, if I didn't have a chance to call him.
I just reached out to set up a meeting with Mike just to see where the borough is and see if we can get this back on track.
They are in the process. They actually have a public meeting scheduled for May 26th. They've been involved in almost a 2-year process to rewrite the entire zoning ordinance. And so this section of the ordinance, they were going to just cut and paste the campus overlay into their zoning ordinance. That meeting is May 26th. So obviously it's a timely conversation that if they get it back on track, they'll cut and paste it and put it into their zoning ordinance to be adopted. I believe that to be what will happen.
Okay, thank you. Because we have a motion and a second, are there any other board comments or questions? Are there any public comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman, this is Lisa Heist from 816 South Church.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, everybody. I have a question for clarification and I have a map question. So when you say that there's no student housing to be going forward in PUC 4, does that mean that no building is to be built even by a private corporation to be leased or rented to the university?
Yes, it would not be allowed.
Okay, so it's not just the university isn't building there, but it's not a private corporation that's building to lease to the university either.
That's right. No form of housing, either an apartment building or something that you would consider to be a dorm, would be permitted in PUC 4.
Okay, thank you. And the other question I have is if I'm looking at the correct map that's with the most recent map that I've seen on the website, there is a difference now in that map that 812 South Church, and I don't have the actual 52N number, but 812 is listed as a Westchester University Foundation property, and it's now owned by a private residence. So I figure that if you have any, I guess, corrections to do that map, I would add that to it.
So Kristen, that's a good question. How would this map go alongside the ordinance, and how would we, if there is an adjustment needed because that is no longer part of the PUC Class 1 overlay, that particular residence, we would show that and adopt it as part of the ordinance, correct?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I wasn't following her. What was she saying? She was saying that the properties.
On page 4, there's a long listing of different addresses, and they have a code number. So I think on page 4, 812 South Church Avenue is listed as a Westchester University Foundation property. It is now a private property. So I'm feeling that if you want to go forward with the most accurate map that you can, that you would need to change that. I'm looking at it now. It is.
Yeah, that's a policy decision, whether, it doesn't matter who the owner is today. If the board wanted that parcel to stay within PUC 1, they could. We'd obviously have to update this to say who the current owner is. But that's a policy decision. Sean, if the board does not want that parcel at 812 Church Street in PUC 1 anymore, we have to remove it.
Let's just ask the board that. My belief was that we drew the PUC Class 1 map to avoid any further encroachment into that neighborhood, and therefore if there's a property that is now back in residential use, then we should include that as outside of the PUC Class 1.
Okay, it's 52-5N55, 812 South Church Avenue, because Mr. Villela and the other gentleman and Julie Dietrich, with whom we spoke before, had offered that back to a private resident, for which we are very grateful. But I just figured that since it was still on the current map, that maybe you wanted to know about it.
Yeah, thank you, Lise.
Mm-hmm.
So do the rest of the board agree that that's the situation? We should remove it or not?
It's on page 4. If it's helpful.
Yeah, the map on the website, I just checked it today, was from back on January 22nd, 2018, and that's an old map. The latest map we were dealing with is the one dated February the 18th, 2020. So we need to update our website with the map, and for that matter, what the text will be of the ordinance as well.
Yeah, I bring it up because there might be other changes as well that you might not be aware of.
Is that parcel the furthest south so that it's going to still be a contiguous PUC 1 district?
Yes, it's just a little line that comes into the neighborhood below Norfolk Avenue as it enters the parking lot behind Sykes Student Union.
Okay.
So it would not be an island, Kristen, it would just be, that line would straighten out rather than dipping down and including it.
Understand, thank you.
Mhm.
So I just want to check that the board agrees that that should be removed from the Class 1 overlay.
Yep.
Robin?
Yes.
I'm in mute. Yeah, I think it should be removed.
Okay, thank you, Lisa, for pointing that out. Okay, so you aware of any other changes like that in that particular Class 1
No,
area?
that was the only one that was in question, because I know the foundation had been looking to get rid of that property.
Okay.
Sean, this is
Go ahead, Doug.
So student housing is being taken out of class 4, so there won't be any student housing in this piece?
Yes, and the overlay will not allow student housing in any of the Class 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other public comments or questions? Well, hearing none, we have a motion and a second to move forward with advertising for adoption the Westchester University Overlay Ordinance. So we'll take a roll call vote. Ashley?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Hugh?
Aye.
Robin?
Aye.
And I vote yes too. Thank you, everyone.
Sean, can I ask Casey? Casey, can we have updates on our website with the latest map and with the ordinance language?
Yeah, I believe that was just transferred from the old website, and that transfer was ancient. So we'll make sure it's updated. Absolutely.
We're gonna have to go back to get the map changed based on the conversation today about eliminating.
That's very true. And just be mindful. We're going to incur some costs from Bernadine to do that.
Okay, thank you, Casey. So looking at my agenda, seeing what's still left to cover, the next one is discussion and possible approval of ordinance number 6, 2021, amending the township's signs ordinance. Kristen?
So this is, we've had a couple conversations about this. It's a fairly narrow scope amendment to your zoning ordinance. Because it is zoning, there were some procedural requirements we had to adhere to. We advertised tonight's hearing in the Daily Local News on April 13th and April 20th, 2021. We sent a copy of the ordinance to the Law Library and the Daily Local for public inspection on April 8th. Your Planning Commission reviewed this at their meeting on February 9th, 2021. We've incorporated their suggested edits, and then the Chester County Planning Commission reviewed it and issued a letter of March 12th, 2021. So those would be 4 different exhibits that I would and I provided these to Casey that he can reference them into the minutes. The ordinance amends the definition of political sign. It amends the definition of temporary sign. It amends the section with respect to what permits are needed for signs so that you except for signs that are exempt pursuant to 8452Q, and 8452Q adds a new paragraph to exempt from the requirement to get a sign permit political signs located in the right-of-way of a township or state-owned road. It does say that a political sign cannot exceed 3 square feet. They can only be posted a date that's 45 days prior to the date of the election, and then they have to be removed within 15 days of the close of the polls. So we were taking sort of out of the definition and putting it into the specific signs to allow a political sign to be erected more along the lines of a temporary sign. I know one of the comments from the county planning was that a temporary sign by your definition in your ordinance is allowed to be erected for 30 days. I think staff and I had a conversation about that and thought that for a political sign, 30 days probably is not what people are looking to do. They want to have it be a little bit longer, either in advance of the election or after the election. So I don't think there's a problem in having a different time frame for a political sign. So I think, again, there's been a lot of conversation about this, and I think this does address the issue that was presented to the board with some signs within the right of way that were very, very large.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. So obviously we had a previous conversation about this. Are there any remaining questions from board members about the final ordinance that we have in front of us?
I asked before, I'll ask again, just for a matter of record. Kristen, you feel this is something that will be enforced then? This is an enforceable ordinance regarding the signs?
I think it's a better ordinance than what you had, John.
Thank you very much, Kristen.
Any other questions from board members? Are there any questions from the public? Not hearing any questions, so do we have a motion to adopt this?
I'll make it.
Thank you, Ashley. Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Robin. Final chance for board member questions. Does anyone on the public have a question or a comment? Okay, ready to take a roll call vote. Ashley?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Hugh?
No.
Robin?
Aye.
I vote yes. Thank you, Kristen.
Sure.
Okay, remaining agenda item next up is approval of the bills to be paid for the general fund, the sewer revenue fund, the waste and recycling fund, and the capital reserve fund. Is there a motion to approve the bills to be paid?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Robin.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Hugh. Are there any board member questions on the bills? Are there any public questions or comments about the bills to be paid? Hearing none, ready to take a roll call vote. Ashley?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Hugh?
Aye.
Robin?
Aye.
I vote yes. Remaining agenda item is public comment. Are there any public comment or questions that anyone has for the board this evening or staff?
Hi, Sean. It's Doug. Couple of things. Just congratulations to Derek, and sorry to see you go, Derek. And may you have a great success over at East Goshen, taking Rick Smith's place. Also, I want to say congratulations to Justin Dominio on his promotion to captain. And also, there was at the old Gagliardi Brothers building across from Fernhill School, they were doing some renovating to turn it into a storage place. And I was happy to see that they put bollards in front of their front sidewalk and front entrance. So I just wanted to say that they did a good job with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Thanks, Doug.
Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment or has questions or an issue they would like to raise? Okay, well, we're ready to adjourn the meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Hugh. Is there a second?
I say we all say aye.
All say aye if you want the meeting to adjourn.
I take
Aye.
that as a second.
Aye.
Robin was the second. Robin was the second, Casey. We'll go.
You got it.
All right, everybody. Enjoy the rest
Thank
of the week.
you.
Good
Okay.
night.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good day.
Yeah.